There's a perfectly reasonable explanation for this. We'll get there in a second. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to do light painting, the settings, how to shoot it, everything you guys need, and this thing extends, so it's pretty cool. I'm going to show you guys how this thing works. So the first thing we need to talk about is getting the exposure, the composition, and the focus set right. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm actually cranking the ISO to make sure that I can get the car framed how I want it. Because if you start with a really slow shutter speed, which we'll get to in a second, it's gonna be really hard to frame your car. So now that I've got the frame, I'm gonna bring the ISO down as low as I can. And then once we have our focus set to manual, we're gonna make sure to pull the focus on what I do is the front wheel, depending on what aperture you guys are using. We're gonna also make sure that the white balance is set to something constant. We don't want that to change. And then we're gonna start lowering our shutter speed so we have enough time to walk around the car and light paint. So we're gonna set it to about 15 seconds and we'll see where that gets us to. So there's all of our settings, 15 seconds on the shutter, an aperture of 4, and our ISO is as low as we can. And if we just take a photo here, you're gonna see that I have a 2-second timer set so that once I press it, it won't shake while I'm pressing it. So we're gonna let that run and see how it goes. All right, so it's not a bad first exposure. It gives us a little bit of the background as well, but let me tell you which light we're using. So this light is from Sure. It is a 4-foot, starting at 2-foot extendable light, which is pretty freaking cool. I've been using this in my office for a ton of videos, but it's a really, really cool light that they sent me. So we're gonna use this one to shoot the car, and there's a whole bunch of features in this thing, but we're actually just gonna focus on light painting for today. We've got a good background exposure, so let's go and do some light painting and see where our exposure's at now that we have the 15-second timer on. Okay, so I've got the light set to at like 6%. I might bump it up a little bit, but that's at 20, so this thing has a lot of gumption. So let's go and do some light painting and see how our first exposure works. That first image gives us a pretty good idea of how this is going to turn out. Gives us a really good base exposure. So I'm going to go do it again. I'm going to turn up the brightness a little bit on the light, and then we're going to focus a little bit on the front of the car, see how that goes. But I think this light looks absolutely bonkers cool. 10 seconds to get to the car. Let's do it again. I think between those two photos, we actually have a decent amount of coverage on the car. What I'm going to do is do one with a brighter light too, and just see if I can get one good pass on the car. Dial it up to 80? Let's do 80. Here we go. Dudes, one good pass. Hell yeah. I've also seen some pretty cool photos where they put a colored light inside the car. So I'm gonna dial this to red. Let's put this in the car and see if it'll light up the cockpit area and make it look cool on the inside. Let's try it out. I guess I've got a little bit of explaining to do for this one, don't I? Cool lighting. That's all it is. Don't trust everything you see on the interwebs, kids. So not only does this light have all kinds of cool features, and it extends from 2 feet to 4 feet, which is pretty badass. It's got these really cool feet on it. It's a pretty well thought out light. So thanks Sure for sending this to me. It's been a lot of fun to use. I can definitely recommend this light if you're looking for a beefier, more powerful tube light solution. I'm gonna teach you guys now everything I know in Lightroom and Photoshop, how to piece these together nice and easy. All right, now that we have the photos, we import the photos that you want to use into Lightroom. You can see the settings up in the top left corner that we were shooting at 15 seconds. We had an aperture of 4. We had our ISO at 50, shot on the 85mm lens. And this is our base image. One thing that I want to show you that's kind of blowing my mind is with the Lumix camera, check out how well it handles the low light. If you look in here, I'm not seeing a ton of noise. Of course, if you zoom in, you'll see some texture, but that's pretty crazy. You could almost create an edit with just this shot, which is crazy. But we're gonna use this as our base. Then we're going to take this one, which has our rear painted in, this one has our front, and this one has a bit of a full range. And then this last one here, we kind of painted in the window. I'm not sure if I'm gonna use that one yet, but we'll select all of those images and then we right click hit edit in, then scroll down to open as layers in Photoshop. Don't hit edit in Adobe Photoshop, make sure you open as layers in Photoshop. Once you do that, it's gonna open up a new tab for you with all of your different layers loaded up here. Now, I've already loaded mine up and given them labels. I highly recommend using labels to make sure that you stay organized. Now, before we actually get into anything, one thing you need to do is select all of your layers in Photoshop, go up to edit, scroll down to auto align layers, and what that's going to do is it's going to take all of your images and just make sure that they're perfectly aligned. You'll notice that when you start getting into painting in certain objects or parts of it, some of them might not be aligned perfectly, and so this helps with that significantly. When I want to add a layer or paint in a layer, one hack you can do is you can obviously go and paint it in, but you can also just scroll down to this lighten feature, and that takes all the light from that image and adds it in. But I'm actually gonna teach you how to brush in the sections that you want, as it's a little bit more precise. So I'm going to go back and hit normal again. We're gonna add a mask to this layer. So I've got my background as my base layer, and then I'm stacking layers on top as I want to use them. So we'll hit this little mask button here, and it shows up as white. Now what I wanna do is I actually wanna click on that mask, and you'll find this little invert button. So we're gonna click that, and now we're back to our base layer. So that mask is making sure we can't see anything on top of it. But what we wanna do is hit B, we're gonna get our brush, and then we're going to make sure that if you hit X, you can see that we're painting white. Here's our white swatch. So we wanna paint white on top of that black layer. So you can change the size using the bracket key, and then from there, we can start to paint in whatever we want from that layer. So I've got a flow of 100 and an opacity of 100, and we're just gonna paint this in. And I'm gonna take all that light there because I think it would be natural to see this as if the headlights were pushing through it. But that's pretty easy to do. So on these other layers, I did the exact same thing. So on the front layer, I just wanted to keep the front light and add in some of these little details here. You can see if I disable that layer mask, there's a few more details in here that I wanted to paint in. So if I paint those out, you can see it's not quite as nice. So I'm gonna paint those back in and keep those details in the front. I also wanted that nice dark window, and I was able to find that from this front layer to remove that light painting. And then on the rear, as you can see, there is quite a few more details we could get from in these sections. So I made sure to paint those in and bring out the details. There's a little bit more detail in the wheels as well. And then the last one we had was this red window. So whether you like that or not, kind of adds that little pop. So now that we've done everything we want to do, I've cropped it as well to cut off those edges we don't need, and I'm gonna hit save. I'm gonna save it back to where I have my raw photos, and this is probably gonna be a pretty massive file. Unfortunately, this is how it works. Once we have that, we're gonna go back into Lightroom and we're gonna start editing that specific photo. Now, if you want, you can use any of the presets that I've got here. I'll leave a link down below. You guys can use whatever discount is here on the screen. There's almost always a discount running, but I'm gonna use my toolkit and start stacking some of these edits on top of each other. So these just affect the light, and I'm gonna find one that fits this photo the best. Cloudy looks pretty good. Then I'm gonna stack on a curves layer, and we're gonna find one that works well for this. I kind of like that soften because it adds like a little bit of a flatter bottom. Yeah, I'm gonna use soften there, and then I'm just gonna adjust the exposure a little bit to bring up the details. I'm gonna go with Sea Breeze on this one. So there you go, guys. Hopefully this is a helpful tutorial for you on how to use light painting. If you want to check out my presets, you can find them down below, but I have a ton more tutorials like this, so feel free to check them out. You might like this video, and if you enjoy this kind of content, consider subscribing, and I do hope I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.